Welcome back once again, continuing this trend of TCGs that aren't dead, weirdly enough for this channel. I wanted to show off another new game. As a player and collector of plenty of dead card games, that is the core of what I want this channel to be about, and always will be, but there are plenty of games that come out now that I also play and want to support. This one specifically is one that I've been really enjoying. It's called Karumon Brawl. And it's, as you can already tell, a game very inspired by classic 90s style Sugimori Pokemon type art. It's a monster battling game, but that's about where the similarities to Pokemon end. It's closer to, as far as gameplay goes, it's closer to like Triple Triad from Final Fantasy, or more simply put, it's closer to like chess or just a board state management game. But I've been playing this game for the last week or so, and really enjoying it. You'll notice that these look a little rough. They're just printed proxies. It is the print and play version of the cards that are currently on their Kickstarter that is running right now. There's 25 days left, and it is currently already funded, so it should only go up from here. But I just wanted to take a second to make a video to break down the two starter decks that you can get. This game does not include randomized booster packs. Everything is fixed, so it's like a living card game or expandable card game, if that's a more familiar term. You buy the starter deck, and then you can buy expansions, a red expansion, blue, black, whatever, to further your collection and open more deck building options to you. But the two-player starter deck is the sort of introductory tier and what most people would be able to buy. So I wanted to make a video to show off the two introductory starter decks. I'm going to do them each one in its own video. They are a 30-card deck, and I just kind of want to take a second to talk about each card in it. This isn't like a straight unboxing, since there's nothing to really unbox yet, but I did want to show you what you would get within one of the starter decks, as well as how they work, how they function, how they feel when you play them, etc. Now, one thing that I want to say with these, the black sort of border along the edge of these cards is there just for the print and play sake. Kind of just to differentiate them from finalized copies of the game. They will have the yellow border there as the edge of the actual card, so it'll have a little bit more of your kind of Japanese Pocket Monsters card style. It's got that same sort of color of deep gold border. We'll get kind of right into it, though. This deck includes a couple of different elements: fire, grass, metal, fire, grass, dark, and colorless, essentially. Not metal, I apologize. But I'll get into that, and we'll just sort of break it all down. So starting with the grass-type creatures that are included in this deck, I'll show off first 3 copies of Pankuma. He has... this will be a good opportunity to kind of explain these cards a little bit. So he has a power of his own here. He has a type. He has a type that he is strong against, so this is like his... It's like reverse weakness in Pokemon. Instead of printing what they're weak against, it prints what they're strong against. So if he's fighting a water type, he has an additional 3 power. Then here it says level +1. This is a little hard to see on the camera. I apologize. It's much easier to see on the printed copy. But level +1. At the end of a round, you count all the levels of cards facing you, and that's your score for the round. You play 3 rounds and see who has the most captured points or levels, and that determines the winner. You'll see that he is first edition and is a starter, so you can play him without needing to evolve him into on top of anything. That is a similarity that kind of carries over from the Pokemon vibe. They are battling monsters that evolve. He has a text box here with arrows on it. The arrows point to the squares that he can attack. The game is played on a 3x3 grid. So if I play him in, I guess, if you said like B1, he could attack A1, C1, or B2. When you play them, most of them have effects when they're played or when they attack or defend. This guy, for example, when he defends, the attacker doesn't gain power from power-ups during this turn. So this is a power-up that gives you your additional power. So basically, if they have a strength bonus against him, they don't get it. So he's just a good little starter there. And he does come with one copy of his evolved form, Pankuma. Now, a thing that is a little different between this game and Pokemon or anything like it, each of the forms remain and retain the same name. It's not changing into a different creature, it's just growing up. So this one is the upgraded one. It's got 10 power. As you notice, it can attack a lot more directions now. When it enters the arena, it gets power +2 for each other round before this round. So if you play him in round 2, he's a 12. If you play him in round 3, he is a 14. So he's just better the farther into the game you are. But even 10 is a decent power up for an upgraded character. Then we have 2 copies of Sumitaru. Now, this card has had a slight balancing errata to it. His power has been switched from 6 to 4, but you'll see why in a second. When he enters play, search your deck for a starter monster and add it to your hand. A monster that has the ability to tutor your deck for any card is pretty fantastic, especially in a game where you have to level specific guys on top of specific other guys. Finding a starter to go with the evolved form you have in your hand is really strong. Making him a 6 was just a little bit unbalanced for gameplay sake. It just made him far too much of a staple. I think he's still a staple card in like constructed builds, but at 6 it was way too obvious that this card was great. This way he is at least a little bit weaker. There's a lot of 5s, there's a lot of 6s that will beat him in combat. 4s you have to work a little harder to not lose. And our final grass type creature is Kimaru. This is a 7 power. 4 arrows here. When another monster on your team defends, monsters on your team can't gain any effects as a result of that attack. Now, effects, there are abilities, I guess we'll say, in the game that can give effects to other characters you control. Flying, burn, they can burn them. In like Pokemon, it'd be like poisoned or confused or stuff like that. But certain characters in this game can get effects. This is one of the effects cards. It's blocking. So when a character has that effects, they're kind of placed like this, and their sort of effect box expands and they have more action. This guy says when he's defending, your guys can't get actions, effects, because of other creatures. So they can't be set on fire, they can't be hidden, they can't be affected inversely in any way. Adversely, sorry, not inversely. Moving on to the only dark type character. I guess this guy is metal, I apologize. Still a little new to the actual name of the types. Forgive me. Still early in my tenure with this game. But this is Mew. He is a starter. He has 3 arrows, level +1. When he defends, your rival discards a card from their hand. Obviously, if they don't have a card in their hand to discard, nothing happens. But just a scary little blocker. If they want to attack this guy, they're going to have to discard something. You get a 5-card hand. You draw cards at the start of each of your turns, but at the end of the round, you have to discard down to 5, or not down to 5. You have to discard... Let me start over. You draw 5 cards at the start of a round to start the game. You draw a card at the start of each of your turns. At the end of the round, you draw back up to 5 cards if you're not at 5. Or if you're at 8 or more, you have to discard down to 8. That's your sort of max hand size at the end of the round. He, though, just makes them have less options during the round while you're playing, which makes filling the board harder to do. A round ends once all 9 spots on the grid are full and everything is resolved. If you can whittle down their resources, that makes it a lot harder for them to make decisions on mons that could hinder your ability to play or to take more spaces on the board. We have 2 fire types. This guy is Shuira. He is an 8 power fire type. He has 4 arrows on him as well. He's worth a level. He's a starter as well. When he attacks, the defender gains flaming as long as there's at least one other fire monster on your team. So if you have both of these out, you can give the character flaming. Flaming means that at the end of each turn, they lose 1 power. You don't die if you get to 0 power. You're not KO'd or however you want to call that, but you're just much weaker and easier to steal. You get to capture in combat. So his effect is kind of hard to get off in the starter deck specifically, because there's not a lot of fire types to play with, but if you have the other one out, he does work. Worst case scenario, though, 8 power, as you've seen from the rest of these, is a very big base stat. So sometimes he's a good card just to clear a sticky guy off the table and make it your own. Getting into the colorless types in the deck, there's kind of a few of these. So we'll go first with Mogisu. You get 3 copies of him. He is kind of the Pikachu of the game. He's on the back of the card. He is just an iconic character. You'll see him on a couple of other cards as well. He has 5 power. When he enters play, choose a monster on the rival's team with 6 power or higher. That monster loses a power. Just makes something that's big or real big a little less strong. 5 power on his own isn't anything to just forget about. He's only worth a level, doesn't have any power bonus, but he's just a decent little bit of board control. He can make setting up a future turn a little safer, a little easier to do. He does, however, come with a leveled up form with 14 power and 6 arrows. This card is crazy strong. It's worth 3 levels. Anytime a monster on a rival's team loses power at all monsters on that team lose power instead. That, as you can imagine, is terrifying. Having your creatures weakened is really scary. There, especially in the starter decks, aren't a ton of ways to buff your power up in battle. There are some, of course, some combat tricks you can play, which we'll get to in a little bit, but this is super threatening if this gets to sit on the table. And at 14 power, it's really, really hard to take this guy if they manage to stick him. Speaking of cards that are really good, we've got 3 copies here of Nazuna. I call this guy Rat Nana because he is banana rats. He has had a slight text change as well. He has 5 power. When he enters the arena, you can shuffle up to 3 cards from your discard pile into your deck. Now he says, if you do, this card can't attack this turn. Creatures can only attack the turn that they're played. That's just part of their sort of like action string that turn. So if you don't get to attack with him, he just sort of takes up a place on the board, which is fine because he still gets you your level or whatever, and your opponent still has to fight to get him. But you get that option of buying back 3 important cards into your deck or fighting a character. When he didn't do that, when he could take 3 cards and fight, he was really, really strong, and I think would have been a full 3 of in every deck. But for now, I think he's still a great tech option, and I could imagine I'll probably still have like 2 of these in most of my decks. He does also get an upgrade form as well, 11 power, 2 levels. He's got 5 arrows. When he attacks, you can choose a bonus card from your discard pile and add it to your hand. Bonus cards are like trainers in Pokemon. They're just your free actions you get to do during the turn, and him getting to get one of those back every time he attacks. Really, really, really strong. Really strong. The nice thing and the strategic thing that I think is pretty cool design is this card lets you shuffle any 3 cards in your discard pile back into your deck. So you're like, oh, I really want this, this, and this bonus card. They're great. I want to get them and play them again. If you shuffle all those back and then, get to evolve into this guy, you can be like, oh, well, I don't actually have anything that cool to grab out of my discard pile because I shuffled them all back. So he's a neat balance element of deciding whether or not it's worth leaving it in the discard pile and trying to evolve into this guy to be able to buy it back every turn, or if it's worth just shuffling him back. Scary thing with this guy being an 11, he's still pretty high, but if he gets taken and your opponent then gets to attack with him in some way, then they get their own bonus card back. So you kind of have to balance out if that's worth it or not. Now, as I said, you only get to attack the turn a card is played, so it's not like he's just going to attack every single turn or something and have like infinite value. But there are cards that will let him attack again, and it's scary if he gets to. Here's another great card. This card's Chip. He only has 3 power. He's worth 0 points and has no bonus. Only has 3 arrows, so he sounds like he's not going to be very good. Well, that's wrong. When any monster on your team is attacked, that monster gets +1 power. The attacker loses +1 power, or loses a power until this turn ends. This card is crazy. So you stick this on the table. Anytime your opponent tries to attack any of your other guys, your dude is immediately 1 power stronger. Theirs is 1 power weaker, so there's now a 2 power swing. If you can somehow manage to get 2 of these on the table, it's a 4 power swing every time something is attacked or attacks. This is massive, and you'll find that anytime this guy hits the table, it's a huge fight over trying to claim and keep this guy. He provides so much benefit to the deck. I think he is mandatory in a lot of decks. There will be some, I think, that won't have like the means to defend him well, and will probably make him scarier than he is good for them. But I think for now, he is really, really good in just about every deck. And finally, we have Ragiru. Now, this card has been given a legend tag, or an elite tag, I think is what it's called. Basically, you can have 1 copy of this in your deck, which is fine. That makes sense, as you'll see in a second here. 4 arrows, 2 levels as a starter with 9 power is really strong to begin with. When he's captured for the first time during a round, you may discard 2 cards. If you do, Ragiru loses 8 power and is no longer captured. That's just a great effect. You can, if he gets taken, then you just get him back, you get your levels back. And sometimes, say this is like the 7th card on the board, your opponent plays a card to take him, they get control of him, that's 8 cards, he comes back to you, you play a card that's 9, and then the round is over. It's so easy to make this a huge point gain, to keep control of him. So he's just been limited down. He has a lot of power for a starter. Just being able to slap a 9 on the table is really intense. That's it, though, for the Karumons within this Karumon Brawl starter deck. Or at least the first half of the 1-player deck. There are some bonus cards I'd like to get into now. The first one is what's called a player card. Now, these player cards, you're allowed 1 copy of 1 player per deck. These say bonus card here at the top. The printer didn't like the yellow on yellow very much, so I apologize if that's a little hard to read. But this is Marcus. You can play Marcus in an empty space. He can't fight, but he takes up a space on the table. Monsters on your team can't gain effects or lose power during your opponent's turn. As you can imagine from some of the effects that I just read you, this is crazy. Being able to prevent your opponent from making your cards weaker makes it really hard for them to take control of your creatures in battle. They can't gain burn, they can't get any other afflicting effects. Just a really, really strong player card, and I hope that even without playing the game, you can imagine how strong this would be. Even if these cards were blank, we kind of made a joke about this, even if these cards were literally just called Boulder and had no text on them, they would be really, really good, because they take up a spot on the table, they can't be fought, they don't get you points or anything, but they do take up space. Now, bonus cards can be played anytime you want. Mons have to be played in like the main phase on your turn, but bonus cards can be played literally whenever. So your opponent can be, they can draw their card for turn, and you can be like, response, I'm going to play him and take up a space on the table. I can do it to take the 9th spot on the table. I can do it to take a spot that would have been really opportune for you to take control of. I could also play it on my turn to play 2 cards on the table in one turn, which can basically turn 8 into turn 9 to just end the round. It can block off a really opportune spot for your opponent. There's just a lot of things that having that ability to be able to fill board spaces with is just really good. There was one game we were playing where my opponent had cards in like all 3 of the top spaces, and I had a guy here, and if I played something here, I had the ability to kind of capture any of those guys, which I would have been really helpful, but he played this to just block the entire top half of the board off to me, and there was nothing I could do. Everything up there was locked. I can't attack with these guys now because they've already done their thing. I can't get up here to fight these. It was over. There's also a card called Team Up. Now this card's name has been changed to Tag Team, and its effect has been changed quite a bit as well. There are some files that will be... these are changed, and in the printed copies that everyone will eventually get through the Kickstarter, we'll all have these updated texts. I'm helping with play testing and enjoying the game early, so I get to kind of experience these growing pains as we go. But this card is now called Tag Team, and when you play it, you get to attack with any one of your monsters this turn instead of the one that you played. You can still attack with the one you played if you wanted to, but you could instead choose to attack with any of your other guys. Now that's really strong because, like I said, you can only attack once the turn. You can only attack the card the turn it's played. This lets you say, well, I played this guy 3 turns ago, and I want to attack with him again. That's just really, really strong and can open up some really late game opportunities. Treasure Hunt. This card here currently says draw 2 cards. It's now actually draw 3, discard 2, so you're really +1, but you see more cards. This is, again, a card that was just really, really staple, and in a 30-card deck, drawing 2 is excessive. You get through your deck really fast, especially when you start with 5 and get 1 every turn. There's 4 or 5 rounds with turns within a round. I mean, you're just drawing a ton of cards. So drawing 2 cards flat was really good. Now drawing 3, get rid of 2, is also really good, but just less obviously good. There's a little more work that has to be done. You get 1 copy of Cherry Bomb. You can choose a monster on your rival's team, then choose a monster on your team. Both monsters lose 1 power. There are times that this, just on paper, this doesn't sound super good, but if you've already played a character who, can't attack now because he's already had his attack turn, you can just weaken him a little bit to make the card you're about to try to capture weaker. You can use this to weaken something that's already been attacked once to weaken an attacker that's attacking one of your other monsters. There's just a lot of versatility that this card gives you to kind of increase your power, or not necessarily increase, but to change the game state a little bit. Speaking of changing, we've got Tiger Acorn. This card's cool. It gives a monster on your team 3 power. Then at the end of the turn, it gets -4 power. So it's a net -1, but for the turn you get +3. There are times where this is massive. You can use this to sneak wins from small guys. You could attack, they could attack with this 9 against your 7, and all of a sudden your 7's a 10 and we'll take this guy. There's just a lot of opportunity there. We have 1 copy of Cure All. Choose a monster on your team. That monster loses all effects. Pretty good. Losing the burning to prevent them from weakening over time is good. There's just there are a number of effects. There's 6 or 7, and being able to to remove those negative effects is a good thing. To be honest, I don't actually think that Cure All will end up being all that good in constructed play, because I think really the only one that really hurts, there's Crying, which means you can't level them up, and there's Flaming, which does negative damage or negative power. Neither one of them is game ruining. It makes your guys easier to take and harder to use, but I don't know that it's worth a deck slot in a fixed 30 card deck, especially when some of these cards are like as crazy as they are. But it's nice to be able to have this option, especially in a starter deck. I'm glad it's here. And finally, we get 2 copies of Power Potion. This card, just choose a monster in your team, it gets +1 power. Simple. Combat trick, plus power. Makes your opponent have to think twice before attacking a guy. You know, if they have a 6 and you have a 5, and they just attack into you, they have to think a couple times about doing that, because you might be able to just go to 6. If it's a draw, nobody wins, nothing happens, both cards just stay on the table as they were, and no one gets captured. So there's just a lot of ways that this can be used to eke out a little victory, to not lose a guy, or to even win a fight. You can also buy them back with the Nizuna level 2. You can shuffle them back into the deck with Nizuna level 1. There's just a lot of options with this card. That is, however, the last of the cards within the Marcus half of the 2-player starter deck. I wanted to show this game off. I think it's really, really cool. I think it's a nice balance of familiar elements of games. There's a lot of, the triple triad formula of playing a card on the board, comparing power, flipping your opponents to like take it, has been used in other stuff. I had a video on this channel for a while about, well, it's still up, but a while ago I made a video about Cycles of Moss, which is essentially triple triad 2, so it's not unheard of to have this kind of game mechanic. It's very familiar. The Pokemon elements of like the trainer cards being your action cards or whatever, you're leveling up the characters, that all feels and is very reminiscent of Pokemon. The art style feels very traditionally Pokemon. So I think there's something here that will kind of trigger the nostalgia in everyone that plays it. It's not a super long game. Rounds are typically 15-20 minutes, or games are 15-20 minutes. Rounds are like 5, especially if you're better at the game, which is nice. I like that it's not that serious of a game. I can play it between rounds of my main game, and the fact that it's not randomized means that I don't have to like worry about buying booster packs and like chasing foils, or like, oh, I have to get this one copy of Marcus and he's a secret rare and I can't pull him. I don't have to worry about any of that. I just get him. He's just in the pack. You could buy 2 of most of the products to get a pretty playable amount of everything. A lot of the packs will come with 2 copies of the starters and 1 copy of the level ups. So you can get, like, if you buy 2, you'll have 3 and 2. So that's pretty good. I personally backed the Kickstarter at 3 of everything, just to have a full playset. As a player of games, I want to be able to build anything I want. And even at 3 of, I think it was only like $200, which is 300-ish card. I'm happy with where the amount. I'm happy with it. I've been enjoying the game a lot, and I wanted to show it off a little bit. I'll have a sequel video to this coming very, very, very soon for the second half of this starter deck. And then as I play more of this and build some constructed decks, I will probably show off those as well. I really like this game. I like the man behind it. His name is Paul. The artist Nessie has also just captured my heart. Their work is incredible. Their company is very LGBT friendly and focused. It's a huge part of their mission statement, essentially, and that's huge for me. That means a lot to me, and I think it's really important to be conscious and supportive of that in these ridiculous times that we're in. That's the only political thing I'll give you on this channel here, but I just think it's awesome. I'm happy to support it, and I can't wait to see more. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know this is a half hour long for a game some of you have never heard of, but the Kickstarter is currently live. You can back it right now, and you can get these cards yourself. It's already funded, so nothing to worry about there. Don't have to worry like, oh, are we going to make it? It's already there. Now at this point, it's just all uphill. So thanks for your time. Thanks so much for hanging out for a half hour with me. Until next time, the next one should be shorter because I explained the